thing, new subfloor and tile. Now, Robin said that she would rip the bathtub out, Robin Thompson, and put in a jacuzzi tub because it only costs an extra $1,400 or something like that on the cost, and our average bathroom was what, like, does anybody remember $3,500? Yeah. So when you're selling a house, she was taking her house to the highest level from a retail standpoint she could. But you can go in and you can actually pay bathtub companies where they'll come in and reglaze the bathtub. That's about $180 to $190. And they'll take the old pink tiles that are around and they can also reglaze those tiles. And so there's companies out there that you can do it very reasonably with. And I'm saying that only because you may be doing a rental or you may be in a certain area where you don't want to put that much money into it. That's a way to do it. So when you're in the house, like all the closets were carpeted on the inside, new kitchen cabinets, and when you open stuff up, it needs to be cleaned out. All the carpet scraps need to be taken out. It needs to be vacuumed. The house needs to smell good. If you were showing the house, if you wanted to, you could take vanilla extract before the people got there. If you were setting up an open house, take your finger, put the vanilla extract on the light bulbs. When you flip on the lights, it smells like mom's apple pie after a little while. And so you've got people who've got a sense of smell when you're showing a house or you're doing an open house. And before we're done, and we're going to be talking about doing open houses for the neighborhood that the house is in. I would just buy the stickers. I didn't have an alarm system because I was using the next door neighbor routine and the old radios, but I would buy stickers that put on the window that said there was an alarm system in the house. You can buy just the stickers. So then when we had, when you go into a house and you're looking at it and you go up into the attic and you look up and you see the wiring, or you open up somewhere where you can see the wiring is what they call knob and tube. That means there's two wires running and it's got insulators that go on them. That means that your house probably needs to be rewired. It's really antique stuff. And sometimes you'll see people will cosmetically wire a house in the basement. When you go there, it's got a new box and the wiring goes right up into the floors and stuff, but it's still got the original knob and tube wiring. So you want to go into the attic and check for that. When you go into the basement of a house, we would use, if the walls leaked, I would use seal lock and get the walls painted white. And the seal lock will temporarily stop the water coming into a basement. Again, we're going to disclose to the people that the basement did leak when you bought it. It will leak again in the future because that's only a temporary fix. But when they're looking at it, it's not going to be leaking. In the basement, you're going to clean out all the cobwebs out of the rafters. You're going to wipe down the furnace to make it look good. You know, you're going to clean everything up. You're going to use a porch and oil deck gray paint on the floors so that when you go in the basement, white walls, gray floors. If the basements have been paneled when you go in there, recently paneled, you want to make sure you if you're buying the house, you want to make sure you pull the paneling off to make sure you don't have any cracked structural stuff that people have covered up, because I bought a lot of houses where there's stuff covered up. So that's an indicator if you got a freshly paneled basement that they could be cosmetically covering something up. You're going to, usually if it had an old electric box, I would swap out the electric box. That was anywhere from $250 to $400 to do that, so you had a nice new breaker panel there. I would, basement. Plumbing. Typically, like if you had to plumb a house at that point and completely replumb the house, it was running about $2,500 with labor, materials, and everything, you know, like a two-story house in the city of Pontiac. And the furnace, furnaces weren't that expensive. They'd run me anywhere from $700 to $2,500 if it had to have a lot of work done. I'm sorry, $700 to $1,200. And I had relationships with wholesale heating and a couple other wholesale furnace shops. If you've got stuff like you've got a broken water line leading from the house out to the street, that's your responsibility. So you've got to fix it. The city isn't going to pay for that. that can be an expensive proposition when you got to bring a backhoe in and do that kind of stuff. Water problems when you buy a house, typically can be corrected by just raising the dirt, getting the proper gutters down, that kind of stuff. So you want to just use common sense. You'll see a lot of driveways where the driveway heads into the house over time, so it's all the water's coming into the basement. That's basically what a house would look like rehabbed when I did it. I was not doing the jacuzzi tubs. And I had 2 or 3 of my partners attend Robin's seminar, and they came back and they were putting, brass fixtures everywhere and ceiling fans everywhere, and they were doing everything except the tubs, and they were putting the stove and the refrigerators in the houses. And, it actually, I couldn't tell you if the house moved quicker or not. It seemed like it really looked good, so I got to think that it really made a difference probably in moving them. But I was selling the other ones without the stove and refrigerators. It seemed like at the same speed for myself. So I don't know, that's a kind of a personal question. And I'm guaranteeing you that the contractor will tell you that he can get the job done in 2 weeks or a week. That is not true. Double it, double it, double it, double it. And anybody that's in this business, they got to tell you that whatever they tell you it's going to take to rehab it, double it. So our question was, do you have to pull permits?
Yes. No, I mean,
Everything. So my experience in that is the answer is yes. Now I've tried to, so you got to check with the city. The city says you can go in and repaint a house and recarpet it. You don't need to pull permits. So if you're doing something cosmetic. I pulled permits on every job. I did it for only one reason. Because, when I started out, I was in the city of Pontiac, and with the city of Pontiac, they want their money, they want their revenue. So I wanted the permit in the window. I never finalized a permit. To sell a house in the city of Pontiac, you do not have to have city certs. You do not have to have what you do in the city of Detroit. So I would pull my permit, put my permit in the window. Even when I didn't need a permit, I would pull the permit. I did the permit because in the city of Pontiac, if a house sat vacant, then they would come along and condemn it. So I wanted my work permit in the window. It's like, hey, I paid my price here, leave me alone. So I would go pull permits. That was what I did. I'm not saying that's the correct thing to do or the right way to do it or anything else, but it didn't require me to finalize a permit. So I would just pull permits. Now on the plumbing, the heating, and the electrical, those guys would get their permits finalized because I'm hiring a licensed contractor to do it, so I wanted to get the permit finalized. But on the rehab or the repair or the drywall repairs and stuff like that, I didn't finalize my permits. But I paid the city. It was like an insurance policy. Why? Because I had the idiots that would go put the truck in the front yard and throw all the stuff out the door. So I was guaranteed a visit by the city inspectors.
Is it worth adding central air to a house that doesn't have it?
I did not do central air. And I don't know the answer to that question. Because the houses that I was doing at that time were like a $50,000 to $75,000 house. None of the other houses in the neighborhood had central air, and it didn't add that much. Now I can tell you right now, if you have a garage and it costs you more to fix the garage up than it would cost you to tear the garage down, I tore the garage down. It added no value to the property. It would in the burbs. It didn't where I was in Pontiac. All houses, it is an issue. All houses built after 1978 did not allow lead paint. So that means all those other houses had lead-based paint. So you need to be cautious, like when you're outside scraping a house or something like that, you need to have something to pick up those chips or whatever, because if the kids eat them, you got a serious problem. And you need to encapsulate stuff like the asbestos. It seems like it comes in phases, like remember the rayon? That was everybody was hot on that one, and then asbestos. And now with asbestos, it needs to be encapsulated. So you take the heat duct tape if you've got some loose or peeling stuff. And the answer is yes, you're supposed to use licensed people to remove that kind of stuff if you were doing it. And a lot of investors didn't. They used their handyman to get rid of it. So that's something you absolutely want to look at. If it's something you're going to have to remove, you need to find out your cost to remove it and do it properly.
Okay, so just general contractors that you may hire to do your work.
Right.
They're not prepared to handle an asbestos issue.
Yeah, but the asbestos, most of the times like from a city inspection standpoint, as long as it's encapsulated, you're okay. So that you can do stuff to not run into that problem. I know mold is a function of water, moisture. So no moisture, no mold. It's that simple. And that's a great new buzzword that, everybody loves to hang their hat on, so.
Are you familiar with or have you used 203K rehab loans?
His question was, am I familiar with 203K? Yes, for a while they had a 203K program for investors, and they abused it and they took it away. So it was a great loan program. It's geared for homeowners now, and there's some companies that have one where they could expedite 203K loan programs, and that's about all I know about it. I know Flagstar in our market had a really great 203K program and a really strong, and anybody else that knows anything about 203K, we'll talk about it at the end so we can get through stuff. Finding a house, fixing it up, and reselling it is that sometimes it's not a fast exit, okay? Or your first buyer will blow apart. So, and if you've got all this holding cost and you've refinanced the property, you've got to get a tenant in there. So I think in this market, the number one thing you need to absolutely understand is options, rent to own, okay? So, and let's look at every way that you can use a rent to own, okay? So if you were out doing what we were talking about earlier, chasing leads, and somebody's in pre-foreclosure and hasn't gone to sheriff's sale, what that means is, and they don't want, or they just want to deed the property to you, what that means is you can actually catch their payments up and take that mortgage over. That's called a deed off thing that we were talking about. So you get the deed to the property. Now what you want to do is you don't want to spend any money out of your pocket on the property, because what you've done is give them $1 to leave, right? So you want to run an ad to get the property sold. And what you're really looking for is people who really qualify to buy the house. And so let's take this house that we just rehabbed, and the market's a little on the slow side, and we want to get the house sold. So that would apply the same way. So I'm going to back up a little bit. The best way to get a house sold that you've just rehabbed is to sell it in the neighborhood. And how you want to do that is you want to hold an open house. And it requires 2 people, and it requires 2 hours. This is how I do open houses. You pull up, you put your signs, the signs that say open house and all that, and you put some balloons, and then you open up the front door, and the house, you've done the vanilla extract, you turn the light bulbs on, things smell good. Then you, the person that knows the most about the house, are going to go door knocking. And how you're going to do that is you're going to create flyers and say that you're holding the house open, and if you were going to re-hold it open the next day, you can do that, because I did them on the weekends. Usually, you could do them during the evening hours, but I'm catching people on a Saturday coming out, the weather's pretty decent, I'm talking to them, and neighbors are very nosy. They want to come see what happened on the rehab. They want to see the house. And the neighbors all have their daughter that they want to have living close to them. They've got family members. They know so-and-so that wants to live in the neighborhood. So your real buyer for your property is in like a 2 or 3 block radius. And you're going to walk that area, and you're going to hand out flyers talking about the open house and send the people over. And you're going to be able to talk to them. Well, my daughter's this, or my daughter's that, or or so-and-so wants to have somebody to move back. That's the best sales approach to a house that you've rehabbed. And you can do it more than once, because you're going to catch people at different times coming and going. And you've done up a flyer about the house. And then you've listed the next time you're going to hold it open. So and then you're sending them there to walk through, and then you cruise back to the house. That does get houses sold. Then the next exit strategy is the house is not selling, so what we want to do is a rent to own or a lease option. So what is an option? An option is where you give somebody the exclusive right and privilege to purchase your property at a certain price and terms, okay, for a certain fixed period of time. So they've got the exclusive right and privilege to buy this house for a certain period of times. And they are not